The air in the negotiation room was so thick you could taste the metal of a drawn blade. I kept my breathing even, my posture relaxed, a perfect picture of a junior aide just trying to keep up. Across the table, the opposition delegate droned on, but my focus was on my own side, on General Thompson, the lead U.S. negotiator whose jaw was a single, clenched muscle. He was about to fall into a beautifully constructed trap. I leaned forward, my voice a ghost in his ear. "Keep your cool, sir. The camera catches everything." His eyes, hard as granite, flickered to the small monitor angled only for him, then snapped across the table. He didn't look at the enemy. He looked straight at my brother, Mark, the family's golden boy and the delegation's official attaché. I watched as the condescending confidence on Mark's face didn't just fade, it evaporated. It shattered into a million pieces of pure, undiluted panic. It had all started that morning, over breakfast. My father, a retired ambassador who believed diplomacy was a performance art, was holding court. He lavished praise on Mark, his son, his legacy. Mark soaked it all in, preening under the attention before turning his sights on me. I was sitting slightly apart from the group, my tablet displaying the latest intelligence briefs. "Just make sure you're taking good notes today, Sarah," he snorted, his voice loud enough for the entire table to hear. He reached over and patted my shoulder, a gesture meant to feel like affection but landed like a branding iron of dismissal. "Wouldn't want you to miss anything important. Leave the real statecraft to the adults." The familiar coldness settled in my stomach. It was the same tone he used when he explained my own field of study to me at Thanksgiving. The same condescending pat from a dozen other holidays and family events. Another deposit in a long-standing account of being underestimated. I saw General Thompson observe the exchange, a slight frown on his face before he dismissed it as a simple family dynamic. He saw an overbearing older brother and a quiet little sister. He had no idea the insult had just reinforced the most dangerous assumption in the room, that I was invisible, that I was nobody. He chuckled, thinking he'd put me in my place. He had no idea he'd just given his enemy the perfect cover story and me the perfect vantage point. To understand the reckoning that followed, you have to understand that my job wasn't to write down what was said. It was to decipher what was being hidden in plain sight. To my family, my life was a closed book they never bothered to open. They saw the cover, quiet, serious, studious, and wrote the entire story themselves. I remember a dinner a year ago, the night the official announcement of Mark's diplomatic post came through. The entire evening was a coronation. My father, raising a glass of expensive wine, toasted to his son, the brilliant heir to the family's public service legacy. The clinking of crystal felt like a closing door. They were celebrating a future that had been carefully curated and handed to my brother, a path paved with my father's connections. Later, when there was a lull in the applause, I tried to share my own news. I cleared my throat, my voice feeling small in the suddenly quiet room. "I was accepted into the advanced analysis program at Langley," I said, a flicker of pride in my chest. My father smiled that placid, dismissive smile of his, the one that always came before he patted me on the head. "That's nice, dear," he said, already turning back to Mark. "A good, safe desk job. Very sensible, a desk job." The words hung in the air, another layer of insulation wrapped around their perception of me. It was the same feeling I got when I won the state science fair and was told it was a cute project. Mark just laughed and refilled his glass. "We'll have to call you the librarian," he said, "always with your head in some boring government report." And just like that, my greatest achievement was reframed as a quaint, harmless hobby. That world, the world of family dinners and condescending nicknames, felt a million miles away from my reality. My reality was a place called a SCIF, a sensitive, compartmented information facility. It's a room with no windows, where the only sound is the quiet hum of servers processing data from 100 different continents. There are no family connections here. There is only accuracy or failure. In that cold, silent room, I wasn't the librarian. I was the lead analyst. I stood before a panel of men and women with decades of field experience, people whose faces were etched with the weight of the secrets they carried, and I gave them the truth. I would point to a screen at the magnified face of an enemy negotiator. "The subject is using a paralinguistic masking technique," I'd state, my voice calm and even. "He's projecting confidence, but his microkinesics betray deceptive intent. See the muscle twitch below his left eye? It correlates with every mention of their naval assets." The room would be utterly silent, every eye following my laser pointer. I recommend we deploy Operation Silent Bell to verify. I believe he is not negotiating, he is stalling. Here, no one patted me on the head. No one called my work sensible. The Director of National Intelligence would just look at the data, look at me, and give a short, sharp nod. That nod was a validation louder than any toast my father ever made. It was respect, earned in the silence, based on nothing but my own competence. In that room, I wasn't a footnote in my brother's story. I was the one writing the intelligence that shaped world events. I once tried to understand my father's perspective. I asked him why he always pushed Mark forward, why my own accomplishments were treated like curiosities. He put his hand on my shoulder, his face a mask of paternal wisdom. Mark has the presence, the charisma, he explained patiently, as if to a child. That's what forges relationships and makes history. That's what people see and respond to. He paused, looking at me with genuine, if misguided, affection. You, Sarah, have always been detail-oriented. A vital support role, to be sure. Every leader needs a good note-taker. He actually believed he was complimenting me. In that moment, I finally understood. He didn't see me as less. He saw me as fundamentally different, a different category of person. He was a man who only saw the actors on the stage, never the person in the shadows who was feeding them their lines and making sure the lights came on at the right cue. He built his entire worldview around the shine of his sun, and my quiet competence simply didn't compute. It was a blind spot the size of a universe. For years I had accepted the two worlds, the dutiful daughter and the silent analyst. But when my brother brought his arrogance into my world, he made a critical mistake. He forgot that in my world there are no secrets. Back in the sterile chill of the negotiation room, my focus narrowed. The opposing delegate was making another point, his voice a monotonous drone. But my attention was snagged by his hand. Beneath the polished mahogany of the table, his fingers were moving, tapping out a subtle, rhythmic pattern against the wood. At first, I dismissed it as a nervous habit. A tick. But the pattern was too clean, too deliberate. My blood ran cold. It wasn't random. It was a rare regional variant of tap code, the very same code I had spent 2 years studying for my thesis. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird in a cage. My eyes, slow and deliberate, lifted from the negotiator and shifted to my brother. Mark was listening intently, his face a mask of professional concern. And then I saw it, a nearly imperceptible nod, a flicker of confirmation so small that anyone else would have missed it. But it was all I needed. The drone of the negotiation faded to a dull roar in my ears as a single horrifying truth crystallized in my mind. He was the leak. For a second, the world tilted on its axis. My brother, the family's golden boy, was a traitor. But then, years of training slammed a lid on the emotion. Panic was a luxury I couldn't afford. My hands, steady and sure, moved to the encrypted tablet in my lap. I opened a secure channel to my handler, David, a man whose calm voice had pulled me through more than one crisis. My fingers flew across the screen, my movements small and hidden. David, active SIGINT threat in room 1, I typed. Need you to isolate audio from sub-mic 4, table position alpha. Cross-reference tapcode patterns against the Volkov file. Priority alpha. I wasn't making an accusation. I was initiating a kill chain of evidence. I knew confronting Mark would be useless. A lifetime of experience told me that. I saw the flash of a dozen other moments. Him explaining away a dented car, a failed class, a broken promise, and my father's immediate, unquestioning acceptance of his story. My word against his had always been a losing battle. This time, I wouldn't leave it to chance. I needed proof that was absolute, irrefutable, and third-party verified. My fingers moved again. Focus camera 3B, the one embedded in the floral arrangement, I sent to David. It has a clean profile of Major Jensen. I need a time-stamped log of every micro-expression synced with the opposing delegate's speech patterns. Flag all sympathetic muscle responses. My brother felt powerful because everyone was watching the general. He felt safe because no one was watching me. He never imagined the person taking the notes was also building the case for his prosecution. The final hour of the talks felt like the last few seconds before a lightning strike. The air in the room was thin and electric, charged with anticipation. The lead opposing delegate, a man with the practiced smile of a seasoned predator, slid a final document across the table. He called it their most generous offer, A grand gesture for peace. I read the summary on my screen and saw it for what it was, a masterpiece of deception. It was a deal that offered a handshake while hiding a knife, a poison pill buried deep within the technical language of Clause 4 that would cripple our regional intelligence network for a decade. My brother Mark played his part to perfection. He leaned toward General Thompson, his face a mask of earnest, patriotic duty. "Sir," he urged, his voice resonating with false sincerity, "this is a historic opportunity. It's the best deal we're going to get. We should take it." He subtly nodded, a final signal to the general, a final act of betrayal. My own heart was a cold, heavy stone in my chest. I had sent my evidence to the general's secure channel. All I could do now was watch and wait, and wonder if he would trust the silent analyst over the charismatic attaché. Then I heard it, a single soft chime from the general's personal tablet. It was a sound no one else in the room registered, but to me it was as loud as a cannon blast. I knew exactly what he was seeing on that screen. The file David and I had built, the culmination of my quiet work. It would have been a simple, elegant presentation of facts, the video clip, from camera 3B, showing the clean profile of my brother's face. Synced to it, the nearly inaudible audio of the tap code, a ghostly rhythm of treachery. And beneath it all, the clean typed translation of the message he had just received from the enemy. "Poison pill line S in Clause 4. He ice blind. Push him now." The arrogance of it was breathtaking. The general's face, which had been a study in careful neutrality, went utterly still. The slight warmth in his eyes from considering the deal was extinguished, replaced by something arctic. The evidence was absolute. My trap, built from procedure and protocol, had snapped shut. He didn't look at the document again. He knew. This was the moment. I saw the confirmation in the set of his jaw. My training demanded I stay silent, but this was more than a mission. It was a correction. I rose from my chair, my movement smooth and quiet, and walked to his side. The room watched, confused. They still thought I was just the note-taker. I leaned in close, my voice a whisper meant only for him. "Keep your cool, sir. The camera catches everything." It was the final piece, the confirmation that I was not just an observer, but an active player who controlled the board. The general's face hardened into a mask of pure ice. He slowly turned his head, his gaze sweeping past the enemy delegate, past my stunned father, until it locked onto my brother. "Major Jensen," his voice was not loud, but it cut through the silence of the room like a razor. "You are relieved of your post. Stand down." Before Mark could even form a response, the double doors at the back of the room opened. 2 Marine security guards, their faces impassive and their movements economical, entered the room. They didn't look at anyone else. They walked directly to my brother's chair and took up positions behind him. The entire room understood. This wasn't a firing, it was an arrest. Mark's face crumbled. The smug confidence, the practiced charisma, it all dissolved into a pathetic mask of disbelief and pure terror. "Sir, what?" he stammered, looking around for help, for an ally. His eyes found our father, who shot to his feet, his face flushed with a lifetime of entitled authority. "General, this is an outrage," my father boomed, his voice echoing with indignation. "There must be some kind of misunderstanding." General Thompson didn't even grant him a look. He kept his cold, furious gaze locked on my brother. With a slight, almost imperceptible gesture of his chin, he indicated me. That small movement was the fulcrum on which my family's entire world shattered. "Your misunderstanding, Mr. Ambassador," the general said, his voice dripping with contempt, "is that you thought your son was the asset in this room. You were wrong." He let the words hang in the air, a death sentence to my father's pride. "The most valuable person on this delegation is Intelligence Officer Sarah Jensen, the analyst who just uncovered your son's treason." My father's mouth fell open. The blustering outrage drained from his face, replaced by a hollow, slack-jawed shock. He turned and stared at me, his quiet daughter, the librarian, the note-taker, as if he had never seen me before in his life. He wasn't just seeing his daughter anymore, he was seeing a stranger whose power he couldn't measure and whose world he had never once bothered to enter. My father had spent my whole life talking about legacy. In the end, it only took one translated message to destroy my brother's, and for everyone in that room to finally learn mine. In the moments after Mark was escorted from the room, a strange and total silence fell. The negotiations were suspended, the delicate architecture of diplomacy shattered by the raw fact of treason. My brother's career, the one my father had so carefully constructed, was over. He was escorted out in a silence so profound, it felt like a judgment in itself. I watched my father, who was left standing alone in the middle of the room. He was a man suddenly stripped of his title, his influence, his very relevance. The security detail and the remaining delegates just moved around him, as if he were a piece of furniture, a ghost at the funeral of his own legacy. There was no time for me to process the family wreckage. Before my father could even try to speak to me, I was being ushered into a secure side room by one of the general's aides. There was no coddling, no gentle inquiries about my feelings. There was a job to do. A screen flickered to life, and the face of the Director of National Intelligence appeared, grim and focused. In that instant, my transformation was complete. I was no longer an aide, an analyst, or a note-taker. I was the primary intelligence source, briefing the DNI directly on the immediate fallout and the necessary countermeasures to protect our assets. My voice was calm, my analysis precise. The daughter was gone. The officer had taken her place. 6 months passed. The world outside remained unaware of the specifics, but my world had been irrevocably changed. I stood at attention on a polished stage inside the headquarters of the National Security Agency, the air humming with a quiet prestige my father would have killed for. General Thompson, his expression stern but with a flicker of pride in his eyes, pinned the National Intelligence Medal of Valor to my dress uniform. A sanitized citation was read aloud, speaking in coded language of a critical counterintelligence action during sensitive international talks that had protected the nation's interests. The words were vague to the public, but to me, they were a precise and deeply satisfying acknowledgement of a secret truth. As I stood there, I let my eyes scan the audience. I instinctively looked for my family, for a face I recognized from my childhood. There was only an empty space where they should have been. And I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just a quiet acceptance. Then, my eyes found the front row. There sat David, my handler, and the rest of my tight-knit analysis team. They weren't cheering loudly. They were just watching me, and on their faces was a shared look of profound professional respect. David gave me a slow, proud nod. This was my circle now. This was my family, one forged not in broken obligation, but in mutual competence and absolute trust. A few weeks after the ceremony, an email appeared in my secure inbox. The sender was my father. The subject line just said, "Sarah." I opened it without any hesitation, my heart rate remaining perfectly steady. It was a long, rambling message, a pathetic cocktail of weak apologies and weaker excuses. He wrote about the immense pressure Mark was under, the corrupting nature of ambition. Then came the real reason for his message, a desperate, clumsy plea for me to speak to. The prosecutors on Mark's behalf to use my newfound influence to lessen his sentence. He was still trying to use me, still seeing me as a tool to fix his golden boy. I read the entire email, my expression unchanging. The old me might have felt a storm of anger or pain, but the woman reading that email was different. She was an analyst, and an analyst's job is to process information dispassionately and act on it. I didn't reply. I didn't delete it. I simply clicked forward. I typed in the email address for the lead prosecutor at the Judge Advocate General's office. In the body of the message, I added a single clinical line for your files, may be relevant to motive. I hit send, archived the original message, and turned back to the classified tactical map on my main screen. My work was uninterrupted. My family believed power was about having the loudest voice at the table. I learned true power is understanding the silent languages no one else can hear. If you've ever had to prove your worth to people who refuse to see it, share your story below. In this community, your expertise is always recognized.